What's up, everybody? It's Jordan here, and today I'm here to answer your questions. This is a Q&A video. A lot of you submitted your own questions for this video, and I'm excited to go through those and give you answers and tips and whatever it is that you guys asked. So let's get into it. All right, first question of the day is, how do you identify your birds, Merlin ID or field guides? And to be honest with you, I mostly use Merlin ID on my phone when I'm out in the field. It's just, I have my camera, I have my checklist already on my phone. It just makes a lot more sense to use Merlin ID when I'm out looking at birds. If you've never heard of Merlin ID, I would suggest there's plenty of YouTube videos out there explaining how it works. But yeah, it's just an app on your phone and it does an amazing job. I do, however, use illustrated field guides like Sibley's. That's the one I would recommend. There's other good ones. Peterson's is pretty good, National Geographic, but Sibley's is a really good one because it points out on those similar birds. Let's say you're trying to identify a greater scop from a lesser scop. The Sibley's field guide will identify the different identifying factors for you. They'll point them out and it makes it really, really clear. So I would suggest you use a combination of the two things, a combination of your field guides on your phone as well as your field guide illustrated form. All right, second question of the day is, how do you bird by listening to their calls? And to be honest with you, when I started birding, I wasn't very good at this, and I wouldn't necessarily say I'm good at it now either, but it just takes practice. There's sound quizzes on eBird's website that you can use to practice and listen to calls and quiz yourself. But also, I think just being out in the field and identifying different bird calls. Some of the first bird calls that I was able to recognize was the northern flicker. I started to pick up that call and say, oh wait, that's a flicker, that's a flicker, that's a flicker. And then it just kind of gets stuck in your head. Common yellowthroat is another one that I was able to hear over and over and over again. And then eventually it just got cemented up here. So one, you should practice listening to different calls. And then number two, just being out in the field definitely helps you to learn the calls and then be able to identify them in the future. All right, the next question that was asked also from YouTube is, what equipment do you use for taking video of birds? Just real quick, vlogging footage comes from my phone at the moment. It's worked out pretty good, but there could be some improvement on the audio side of things and the picture side of things as well. This video is recorded with a phone. But for birds, I use this camera right here, just your classic digital camera. It is a Nikon Coolpix P900. The nice thing about this camera is that it has, 83 times zoom. It really helps you get really close to the birds. It's got that telescopic lens on it. However, you lose a little bit of quality the further you zoom in. And so it's not, I wouldn't say the best for like professional photography, not even the best for professional videography, but it's an affordable option for people who are just looking for something to get into bird videography. I bought this one for about $400 and I bought it used, obviously. This model is about 9 years old, but it's been wonderful. I have no complaints about it. It does everything that I need. It's just a really good camera. I've also heard good things about I believe it's the Panasonic Lumix. That's another camera. I can't remember exactly which model, but they have that really lengthy zoom. This camera I've seen videos of it getting the rings of Saturn on film in the right lighting, in the right circumstances. So just an overall amazing camera. But next question is, what is your dream bird to see? And this was kind of hard because there's a lot of birds that I want to see. There's a lot of birds especially birds that live outside of the United States, that I would love to see. I think my dream bird to see that's more realistic is any type of toucan. I would love to see a toucan in the wild. I think those birds look almost fake when you look at them. Obviously, I've seen them in captivity, but just going and seeing them in their natural habitat would be absolutely amazing. And then one that's a little bit harder for me to probably see during my lifetime is the pink robin. If you haven't seen pictures of the pink robin, I encourage you to check those out. They're absolutely stunning birds, and they live on the island off the coast of Australia, Tasmania, and in a few parts of Australia as well. And that just would be an amazing bird to see. I don't know how realistic that is, but I hope one day to be able to see the toucan, any type of toucan or all the toucans, and then as well as the pink robin. All right, next question is, what got you into birding? A lot of people ask this question. A lot of people want to know what got me into birding. When I was growing up as a kid, my parents would allow us, when we went to national parks, to get souvenirs. I always got field guides, almost every single time. I was fascinated by birds and other wildlife, but mostly the birds, and so I would always buy field guides. I have one right here actually with me. This one is a little bit more than birds, but it's the National Audubon Society Rocky Mountain States field guide, and it just has pictures and stuff, and so I would collect these as a kid. And then also, just growing up, my grandma used to feed hummingbirds, and there were a lot of birds in her area, and I would always ask her questions about those birds. And then between visits, she would research all she could about these birds, so she would be able to tell me about them when I came and visited again. And so a lot of my love for birds comes from my grandma as well, and that just, from there, just got me into the hobby of birding. The next question that I have on my list is how to spot birds, or tips for spotting birds with binoculars. What I think a lot of people don't realize that aren't in the birding hobby, they might be looking at, bigger animals like elk and deer, is that spotting something as small as a bird through binoculars is actually really difficult, especially if you don't have any practice. And so when I first started out, it was pretty frustrating trying to find the bird in the binoculars, and you could see it with your bare eye, but then lining up the binoculars and trying to look for it was really difficult. And so what I would suggest is, again, one, it takes practice. So go out in the field and keep trying and spotting birds. But if you really just want to accelerate your skills, I would suggest picking points, maybe in your yard. Pick the fence across the yard and just practice seeing it with your eye, and then picking up the binoculars and trying to land directly on it. And keep doing that. Pick different points around your yard, and then over time, you'll just get better at being able to raise the binoculars and get it almost instantly. Same thing goes with camera. When I transitioned from binoculars to trying to find things in the camera, it was incredibly difficult and frustrating. But over time, just being able to practice, I was able to eventually get the birds in my camera almost immediately when I raise it up to my eyes. All right, what is my favorite bird is the next question on this list. And this is a really hard question, I think, for most birders to answer because there are so many options. My favorite bird is the greater roadrunner. And the reason is because it's a very unique bird. It's a relatively elusive bird for people that want to go out and see one. Often you see them when you're not expecting to see them. They just kind of show up. It's also the logo for the channel for a reason. The roadrunner is my favorite bird. However, it is not my spark bird. A spark bird is what bird really got you into birding. And my spark bird, and also one of my favorite birds, is the mountain bluebird. I spent a lot of time in the mountains growing up, going camping, and seeing that beautiful bright blue bird was always just an amazing treat. And so between those two birds, favorite bird, greater roadrunner, another favorite bird, but also my spark bird is the mountain bluebird. All right, my next question on my list is, what are some birds that have, names that are commonly used that aren't their actual names? And I only have a few examples for the purposes of this video, so it doesn't go too long. I might do a more extended video on this in the future. But seagull, for example, is something that people use, at least where there are gulls. They use that word seagull on a very common basis. It's used in popular media as well. But a seagull doesn't actually exist. There is no such thing called a seagull. It's just something in our culture that we've picked up, and we started calling everything seagulls, even though there are only such things as gulls. The second one is a lot of birds have historical names that have been changed to new names. So for example, the northern harrier used to be called marsh hawk. Some people still call it marsh hawk. And then as well as the osprey for the longest time, especially in the early 1900s, was called a fish eagle, because of its diet just eating only fish. So those are just a few examples of birds that have other names that aren't their actual names, and just some culture that, like seagull, that doesn't exist, but we call things seagulls as a society. All right, next question is, what is my biggest, earliest mistake I made as a YouTuber or as a birder? And as a birder, my biggest, earliest mistake was putting all this pressure on me to just be right about everything. And that is also my same mistake as a YouTuber. I stress so much about not making mistakes. And I don't think that's a realistic expectation for anybody to have going into birding. Obviously, it is very important to identify birds correctly. However, I think it's very unhealthy for us to set unrealistic expectations that we're never going to be wrong. And that's something that happened on my YouTube channel. In the second video that I ever made on the Grand Canyon, I misidentified 2 birds. And it could have been easy to just give up there and not keep doing YouTube and say, oh, I'm a bad birder. But I think that it is important to just recognize that you're going to make mistakes on your journey, whether it be YouTube, whether it be birding, and to accept that. And then when people come to you and say, hey, you misidentified a bird here, to just thank them for it, because that means you're learning. And so that's the best piece of advice I think I could give for early birders or early YouTubers as well. All right, the next question is, have I ever smelled a bird? And this one comes from a Discord user. If you're not part of the Discord community and you'd like to be, check out the link below. I have my Discord linked there. It's kind of like a social community. It's a lot more tight-knit. I am very active in that community, and I would love to have as many of you there as possible. Have I ever smelled a bird? Not exactly, I would say. Birds don't often get close enough for you to smell them. They do probably have a smell. For example, the turkey vulture will vomit as a defensive mechanism. And that stinks, so maybe don't go near that. That's like rotting flesh and stuff that they're vomiting up out of their stomach. I think just like collectively, having gone to a few aviaries and zoos and stuff, birds do smell. Also, people who have pet birds can probably tell you that they do have a smell. Yeah, I'd say birds have a smell. Have I ever really smelled one? No, they don't get that close. Maybe try it and let me know in the comments below if birds smell. Next question is, how do I make my thumbnails? I had a few people ask this question, and I've also had a few people reach out to me and ask me on Instagram. If you're not following the Instagram, it's also in the description below. I post photos there. How do I make my thumbnails? I use free software for the whole process. I use Adobe Creative, which is free. There is a paid version. You don't need the paid version. Just get the free version. A lot of the birds that are featured on the thumbnail are from stock images. So I use pexels.com as well as pixabay.com to get my bird photos. And then to remove the background, clean the background off the bird, I use something called remove.bg. And that's just a free website that removes the background off of the bird. I use another software called Photopea, and it's basically Photoshop, but for free. So everything I do is for free on the thumbnail side of things. I use that to add the white border surrounding the bird, and me, I guess, for that matter. The backgrounds of the thumbnails are a lot of them are pictures that I take out in the field. Some of them are pictures that I get that are free public domain stock images as well. And then I adjust the lighting to make things brighter, to make things more beautiful. But yeah, that's kind of my process on thumbnails. If you do have more questions surrounding that, you can reach out to me on Instagram in the link below. Or you can join the Discord and you can ask me on Discord as well. Next question on the list is, what is your favorite spot to go birding at, or that you've been birding before? And honestly, I know it just happened, but Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve in Southern California near Huntington Beach was absolutely amazing. I loved every second of that trip. I can't wait to go back. I would highly recommend that spot for people who need some coastal type birds and just want to have a big diverse group of birds to identify. There's kind of 2 sides to this question. What is your favorite spot to go birding, and what is this favorite spot that you've been birding? I think those are 2 separate things. My favorite spot to go birding that still holds a very close place to my heart is Kachina Wetlands. That's where I started these videos. That's in Flagstaff, Arizona. But that was such an amazing spot, and I started to go there every single day for a few weeks and really fell in love with that spot. As of right now, that is my favorite spot to go birding. I haven't been back there in a while. I'm now, 9 hours away from Flagstaff where I live. Between Kachina Wetlands and Bolsa Chica, those are my 2 favorites, I guess you could say. All right, the next question that I have for the Q&A is from our Facebook group. Again, link in the description below if you'd like to join the Facebook group. How much time a week do you spend birding, and how much time a week do you spend editing your videos? And I thought about this a lot. I think on average, birding per week, if I do 2 adventures a week, is about 6 hours. So 6 hours birding during the week. Editing videos, it probably takes me about 2 hours per video. That's an additional 4 hours a week. I'd say this whole thing put together is about 10 hours a week of my time on average. The next question is, do I watch other bird tubers? Do I watch other YouTubers who cover birding? And the answer is yes, I do. I watch a lot of other birders, you know, in the same niche that I'm in. One, to help improve my own content, but two, to support the people that are doing the same thing as me. I think what's important is that if the niche of birding grows on YouTube, it'll positively impact all birders on YouTube that are trying their best to create content. A few people that I watch, and you know what, I'm gonna try to name as many as possible. I don't want to leave anybody out. This question came from the Dutch birder. His videos are in Dutch, but he does have subtitles in English, and he has some awesome content that I've watched. Birding with Chris, we did the competition with birding with Chris. Awesome birder, young birder. He's gonna do some great things in his life. Badgerland Birding, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of them. Backyard Aviary Adventures, they're based in the UK. Brit Hikes Ontario, he just did a 250-year birding challenge. I would recommend that channel as well. Nature with Gabe is someone that I recently discovered, who focuses on a broader, you know, nature, not birding, but there's birds in there as well. Bird Docs, another great channel. Again, I don't want to leave anybody out, but I think shouting out these other channels, especially smaller YouTubers, to help grow the niche, to help grow birding, is something that's just going to positively impact all of us. And so I will continue to try to do that as I move forward, as my channel starts to grow even more. My goal is to never forget the small channels. I'm a small channel. We all have to start somewhere and continue to shout people out and continue to grow the niche as a whole. All right, last question for today is, what is your most memorable birding moment so far? And I would have to say my trip to Navajo Bridge in Arizona to see the California condor. I went to the Grand Canyon to find the condor and wasn't able to find it. But then I went to Navajo Bridge and there were 7 there hanging out, and one flew directly over my head. They were amazing birds to see, and for 2023, that is probably my most memorable moment so far of birding. I just want to say thank you to all the questions that were submitted. I'm going to try to do one of these once a year. Thank you so much for your support. We recently hit 440 subscribers. The goal for 2023 is to hit 500. We're very close to that goal. I am so appreciative of you guys watching my videos and commenting and liking and sharing. The channel's only going to go up from here, and I can't wait to continue with this journey. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope to see you all next time on Bright Eyed Birding.